Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. We are focusing on a special guest who's got a real specialty in empires and exits that come along with those empires. Watching some of our influencers, watching some of the tribes that are being created, we're seeing incredible growth in those numbers, in the people and the audiences that they're building. And of course, what happens then is we might be looking towards an exit and taking that growth and being able to capitalize on that in an amazing way. Today's special guest is no stranger to building empires himself, having started his own startup company, which he then went on to list on a website called Flippa, which he is now the CEO of, based down in Melbourne. He's also worked with Xero as the head of strategic partnerships there. He was the GM and chief revenue officer for Luxury Escapes, which actually grew to over 300 million in gross revenue. And of course, the influencer model playing a big part in the hotel space and Luxury Escapes. As the CEO of Flippa since 2018, our special guest here, Blake, has created something of a phenomenon, launching now in multiple companies, partnering with Google and creating the world's best marketplace for listing digital assets and exiting companies. He is the CEO of Flippa.com. He is an incredible business turnaround specialist. He is none other than Blake Hutchison. Blake, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, well, thank you so much for having me.
Mate, what a journey. You've created something special there. So I'm looking through your history. You're university educated. You've got straight into the corporate space. You've worked with startups. You've grown through partnerships. And now you're heading up the fastest growing and biggest digital marketplace on the planet. Mate, what a journey for you.
Yeah, it's been interesting. I've worked in lots of different industries across lots of different business models. Flippa is certainly the most interesting so far.
Speaking of business models, with Flippa, you would have, I guess, visibility on some of the most incredible business models of all time coming across your desk. I mean, have you seen some big changes in the time since you've been there?
Yeah, I think for all of our staff, it's almost like a mini MBA every time you come to work, because the world on Flippa evolves so quickly. And of course, entrepreneurs are so clever, so they're always inventing new ways to make money. And of course, in the digital sphere, in the internet economy, that's no different. Flippa's very much attuned to that. We see business owners from all over the world operating across SaaS, e-commerce, YouTube channels, newsletters, apps, iOS and Android, and anything that is digital. And so it is really interesting. And of course, the entrepreneurs that live and breathe within the Flippa ecosystem are pretty savvy. They do things really well, and they get the benefit of exiting. So it's super interesting. Well,
I love it. I've actually personally sold a bunch of sites on Flippa. You know, we've created little WordPress sites or little apps that we've sold there. It's been an amazing success. But I was looking, Flippa's whole, I guess, demeanor has changed, especially in the last few years. Now, as I look at Flippa, I mean, you are really focused on M&A. You've got a high profile teams there that are working with brokers. You've really elevated the, I guess, the base of Flippa into that high level enterprise market and everything in between. I'm seeing, again, valuations from 10,000 to millions. You've grown that massively. How have you gone about that?
yeah, so I guess it starts with the vision. So the vision is to create the investment bank for the 99%. So you and I both know that the world of M&A has been reserved for very big businesses and those who are, well connected, well heeled, and often can afford the services of an investment bank. But for the small guy, for the SMB, for the male and female founders around the world who have created something of value, they also deserve that opportunity to exit. And so we believe that there will be one default marketplace, like in many other industries, that will ultimately dominate the M&A service proposition for as many business owners as possible. And so therefore our mission is to democratize the exit, make founders aware of that exit opportunity, and provide that in the most efficient and scalable manner to serve as many people as possible. And so when I joined, which is now nearly 7 years ago, Flippa was a good company, but we were a company that represented mostly tiny digital assets. And over time, the internet economy has clearly evolved and matured, and e-commerce businesses 15 years ago were new and small and nascent. And now they're big and mature and thriving. And so we have done a good job of obviously positioning ourselves to capitalize on that. But at the same time, we've also followed the internet economy and its maturation generally. And so over time, those business models have evolved. Small business owners are now gravitating to the internet first and foremost versus traditional S&B. And over time, they've also become very attuned to this idea that much like buying or selling a house, buying or selling a business is something that is available and accessible to many. And so for us, it's been about obviously hiring great talent that can help customers exit, but it's also about making sure that the platform itself can satisfy the needs of those who operate in the internet economy. So we only do digital, which means we specialize in understanding the nuances of an e-commerce business or a YouTube channel or a SaaS business or an iOS and Android app. And that's different to most people. So we've become specialists in that space and therefore built specialization in exiting those businesses.
I love it. I love it. And for the audience that we specifically talk to, Blake, we're talking to creators. We're talking to people who are building their own tribes and their audiences. And often the question of monetization comes up when we're talking to these influencers. So somebody's running a YouTube channel, for example. They're creating great content. They're driving up those subscriber numbers, and that might be monetizing that in a number of ways. That might be ad revenue or contracts that they've got, branding placements, their own products, white label might come into the play. Is there a model for a creator or for somebody that owns that kind of influence and space that works best in terms of exiting that as a company?
Yeah, so certainly what a buyer is looking for is something that they can take over and run in the same manner or more efficiently. And so therefore, something which is easy to adopt or easy to take over is better than something which is more bespoke. And so the easiest would probably be AdSense, and that's Google's traditional ad monetization model. And that was initially used for bloggers and publisher sites and has obviously expanded to be a suitable way to generate revenue if you're a YouTube channel creator or owner. And so that's the easiest way to generate revenue and the most understood way from a buyer standpoint. But that's not to say that if you are more orientated to taking on direct sponsorships, that can't also be very successful. And they could be sponsorships by way of a brand paying for pre-roll, mid-roll, end-roll, or it could be, somewhat of a product placement. Let's say, for argument's sake, you've got a YouTube channel about golf and you're getting a sponsorship by Callaway or Titleist or Strixon, where they're asking you to use their clubs or their balls. Don't ask me why I've gone down the golf track, Walt, but here we are. Then that would be easily, you could easily articulate that and therefore get buyers who are interested in that. Really what it comes down to is the viewership growing and predictable?
Yep.
And is the revenue growing and or predictable? And so if those two things stack up, then you are sitting on a really good quality channel, and you are therefore sitting on a channel which can be leveraged by an acquirer. Now, some of the time, it's important to recognize why buyers buy. And so a buyer will buy for one of two reasons. They're either a financial buyer, in which case they say, Walt, really good YouTube channel, I'd like to buy it from you because I believe the financials stack up and I want the benefit of the ROI. Pretty straightforward financial M&A process. In other cases, it's more strategic. So let's say, for argument's sake, you own a chain of golf shops and you have 25 shops across Australia, and you then find a channel which has got a massive following among community golfers across Australia, then you could acquire that channel for its arbitrage benefits. So essentially, customer is what you're seeking to get out of it. And therefore, whilst you might be interested in the revenue, probably what you're more interested in is the size of the audience, where the audience is based, and the audience's propensity to buy from you.
Perfect. Amazing. So we talk about monetization, we talk about creating that revenue, and of course that's factoring into the exits as we're saying there. When it comes to business ownership, and again, with your experience and looking back over the incredible businesses you've seen come through Flippa, quite often what we see is that a business really takes the profit from an exit. So they've built up something over the years, maybe just a business owner is just paying the bills and getting by, but then it's the exit that allows them to really capitalize on their years of hard work. Yeah.
Well, 100%. I mean, I used to work at Zero. You will have seen that, or I think you even alluded to that in my introduction. And one of the things which was really interesting there is obviously watching business growth through the data, and then obviously watching average business life cycle. And the reality is, most businesses don't survive that first year, and the average life of a business is just over 5 years. And so if you think about that, it's highly unlikely that a small business owner is going to want to run their business forever. They may do that today, but the reality is that's unlikely in the future. And so, therefore, as you said, a lot of the time, they're just trying to put a roof over their head. A lot of the time, they're working on something that they're passionate about. A lot of the time, they actually do run out of steam, and therefore, it's important that creators, YouTube channel owners, social media influencers, or business owners generally start to think about the time in the future where they may consider that exit process and start to plan for that early.
And we spoke just before we hit the record button about there being a great time to plan for that and a terrible time to plan for that exit. Is there if somebody's at this peak, they feel like things could not be going any better than they are right now, is that the right time? Should they push it a little bit further? What's your thoughts there in terms of planning for that?
So generally speaking, I think, and I've been an operator of businesses. I've obviously been an entrepreneur. You've alluded to that. And I've been involved in multiple startups as well. And so a lot of the time there is a point where you start to lose confidence and faith in what you're building. And a lot of the time your energy levels will start to dissipate. And so you can feel that coming. And so it's really important that the minute that type of feeling starts to arise, that you start to plan accordingly. And that means ensuring that financially the business is in the best possible shape, not the worst possible shape. And it also means that, things like standard operating procedures, things like using cloud accounting, things like working with a bookkeeper or accountant to ensure that your financials are actually in a good working order, should actually be planned at that time versus when you truly do run out of steam, because it kind of smells, and a buyer will sense that, and they're less likely to want to acquire something where they can feel like it's been neglected over X period of time.
Interesting. So we've talked about the exit as being an amazing time in a founder's life or a creator's life when they capitalize on that. But what I've seen, I was looking at the Flippa Facebook page just a few moments ago. I think there's 37,000 people following every single post, and congrats to the Flippa team who are posting there multiple times a day with different deals that are available and different sites that are for sale and different buyers that you're looking for. And that's the one I want to focus on just for a moment, because we're talking about selling. But there's a real niche inside of the Flippa community that are professional acquirers, yeah? So they're looking to grow their portfolio, people with revenue, people with experience. They're coming into Flippa saying, cool, what do you got? I'm ready for the next one. I'm ready to pick up something else in my world. Have you got a growing community of people that are cashed up, ready to buy inside of Flippa?
Yeah, so I'm going to backtrack just a little bit and talk about the sort of size of exits, and then give you a feel for the buyers that look for those different.
Great.
So there's kind of new car exits, new apartment exits, new house exits, and new life exits. There is this different size exit price that will afford you different things as you go above and beyond or outside of that exit horizon. And so then you'll have side hustlers. They're those people who are looking to buy something that is going to provide them some income while they work for somebody else, typically. You've got a kind of acquisition entrepreneur, and they're looking to buy their next job. So they've put aside some money, they've been searching for something, and they're going to take over your business and run it for the purposes of their professional income. Nice. And then you have strategic buyer, or institutional buyer, who's typically looking for something bigger, and it typically has strategic and or financial benefit to the company that they already run today. And we have a massive mix depending on the price point, because Flippa does do, as you said, what we represent businesses as low value as $10,000 and as high as the biggest business we've sold on the platform was $35 million. And so
Fantastic.
it really does have quite the range. And so, yeah, in short, we sign up between 17,500 and 20,000 net new buyers every month. And we have
Wow.
over 1.6 million buyers in our network. And we have
Amazing.
them. The US does dominate. So there are more buyers registered in the US than there are anywhere else. But the good news is for a entrepreneur operating, no matter where they are in the world, the reality is it's the internet. And so so long as you've got a diverse audience base, which most creators do, then you will tend to appeal to a global buyer regardless of where they're based. And yes, it's a very big audience and they have very specific mandates. You get people who say, I really want a faceless YouTube channel in the automotive space. You'll get people who say something more broad than that. They'll just say, I'm looking for a SaaS business which is generating greater than $2 million EBITDA. And so, some go very broad in their mandate and some go very specific in their mandate. And so what Flippa has is AI matching. So we basically look at all those mandates. We also look at intent on the platform. So we watch what they're doing on the platform. And we then essentially create a likeness score. So how similar are you to me? And if you're similar enough to me, then I will show you assets that Walter's looked like, and then vice versa. Walt will see
Nice.
assets
Okay.
to look at. And then we will
Fantastic.
text those buyers, we will email those buyers, and essentially we're running AI matching, 425,000 AI matches a week, so 20 million annually. And our job is therefore to make sure that there's enough buyers looking at the relevant assets on the platform, ensuring that those entrepreneurs can get the exits that they want.
That's fantastic. That's amazing. And I'm assuming as you've created that network, Blake, you would have had the opportunity yourself to meet some pretty connected and powerful individuals around both in the buying and the selling space. How has that, I guess, elevation of your network affected you personally?
Oh, look, I mean, I spend most of my time as an operator just trying to build the best performing marketplace to represent as many business owners as possible to ensure that they get the exit they want. We have a team of sales people, marketers, account managers, brokers, etc., operating around the world. And yeah, you're right. They meet some really interesting people, and
Mm,
often, not always, but often, some of those really interesting people have a lot of money. And so, yeah, I mean, you meet people who have gone and raised a bunch of capital from brand name investors and are now shopping for that asset that they can acquire. You also meet some really savvy people that have built, as you say, a portfolio. I mean, there's a guy
yeah.
in, it sounds weird, but there's a guy in Serbia. He's a PHP developer, and he's been acquiring two assets on Flippa a month. So two assets a month for the last 6 years. And
Wow.
so, he has a very, very substantial portfolio. He's spent over $2 million on the Flippa platform. He's scaled those businesses and grown those businesses, achieving substantial ROI on that investment over time. And he's just one example. Now, I've never met him, but I can see his behaviors on the platform. And so
Amazing.
sometimes that's the more impressive, that these people go under the radar. And they're not there to brag necessarily. They're there to truly amass a portfolio of high performance digital assets
I love it.
that will sort of mirror and or outpace what you might get from traditional real estate investment, which is, of course, what you and I are more familiar with here in Australia.
Yeah, wow, that's so amazing. And the digital asset space, as you said, I did the comparison myself against traditional real estate. It's incredible to think what it would take to you to generate the same return so long as you're running it intelligently. So Blake,
Well, the other
you and
the
I,
other thing on
want to focus.
the buy-in's lower. So,
Yeah,
if
right.
you think about a place in Melbourne or Sydney, or I think you're on the Gold Coast, the reality is you're not going to buy in for, in many cases, less than $1 million.
Absolutely.
Whereas you can buy a digital asset for 10,000, 50,000, 100,000, and of course up to 10 mil. Now, so therefore the buy-in is lower. I must admit, to be transparent about it, access to capital is harder because
Mm,
there's no traditional bank that's going to give you 80% of the value of a property or 90% of the value of a property. They're not going to do that in the digital asset landscape because they don't understand it yet. It's still relatively nascent. But the point being is the buy-in is lower and the ROI is far better. I mean, you're buying, these are small businesses. So you buy something for, let's say, $500,000. Well, the reality is that business is probably turning over $150,000 to $200,000 in profit. So, the ROI on that business in year 1, 2, and 3 is far better than the return you're going to get on a rental yield.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. So it's easy to stack those numbers up. Blake, we were talking just before about the digital assets and the growth of social media and influencers and creators over the last few years. I know I'll come back to Marty, who was a YouTuber who sold on the platform. He's a really interesting story. I'll come back to that in just a moment. So YouTube as a channel has been something very successful with the Flippa marketplace. Are there others as well? Have you seen the TikTok shops getting traction, the Instagram accounts also blowing up? Have you seen those kind of spaces, or has YouTube just been the dominating force?
So we are seeing some green shoots there. They feel a bit new still.
Yep.
YouTube's a funny one because whilst it's a new category for Flippa, the reality is the YouTube search engine is the second largest search engine in the world.
Mm,
Google number one, and Google owns number two too.
yeah.
And it's been around for a long time now. And so TikTok shops will get there. Instagram accounts will get there. But YouTube, whilst it feels like a new asset type for Flippa, the reality is it's an established environment where creators have been growing influence, audience, and community for a long time now. And buyers and investors aren't silly. They don't really want fads. They don't really want to place bets, and they're more likely to defer risk. And so, therefore, YouTube feels far less risky than some of the others just because of its long-term establishment. And
Yeah.
so, long story short, that's the fast growth one for us, Walt. And what buyers are looking for there is very, very, very substantial viewership traction. So
Mm.
subscribers important, but nowhere near as important as video views.
Nice, nice. One of the interviews that we had, and I mentioned before, a gentleman named Austin Armstrong, who's created Syllabi and has been an advocate for faceless channels, and has over, I think it's nearly a billion views across faceless channels on YouTube. So you mentioned before that faceless channels obviously have a real appeal to a buyer. Is is it just faceless channels on YouTube that are working, or is there a call that other channels may also have that kind of those results as well?
Yeah, not just. I mean, it's just an easier
You can
thing to
understand it, right?
into the owner, to the
Yeah.
new owner. And so I can't think of a sort of metaphor or equivalent for that in other asset classes. But I guess, well, maybe if you took over a cupcake shop that had a famous master chef that
Right.
had run it,
Yeah.
then, it's all of the brand equity is in that master chef.
Mm,
And in the that you go and now acquire that, you're going to have to retain that endorsement to ensure that people want to continue to visit that shop and buy those cupcakes.
mm.
And so a little bit equivalent to that. It's not
Yeah,
perfectly
I can
analogous,
see.
but a little bit equivalent to that. And so it's just a safer bet. But certainly we've sold a lot of business YouTube channels that are not faceless. But the faceless ones fly off the shelf because let's say
Duplication.
it's just about uh, recipes or something where there's not a brand name behind it, an individual brand name or spokesperson behind it. Let's say it's about whatever, pets falling into swimming pools, whatever. And there's a lot of views for that type of content, then you could mount the case that that's evergreen content. You could mount the case that unless there was a massive change to the YouTube search algorithm, that video and that channel will continue to acquire views. And as a result of that, it's a more likely long-term bet.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Easier for the new buyer to take over. As you said, let's dive into Marty if you don't mind. So Marty, a 75-year-old retired YouTuber, successful sale on Flippa. That's become a bit of a case study for you guys over the last, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. Tell me about that experience. Like that's something that's kind of set the scene for creators on Flippa.
Well, we like it because, most people, when they visualize these creators, they see these young um, millennials, Gen Z. And Marty's clearly not that. He's a
Mm,
boomer. And so we like the idea that, these creator environments, YouTube being one of them, are applicable for everyone. And that
great.
so long as you're passionate about something and preferably a subject matter expert, then you too can build an audience. And so that's why we chose to put Marty on a pedestal because he was so passionate about what he had built. And he'd built it over a fairly long period of time. If I remember correctly, it was 7 years or maybe even longer. So he'd done this for 7 years. He'd established a community. He loved the community. He was really only exiting because at the end of the day, he was 75 years old and he wanted liquidity. And so we can provide that liquidity opportunity for him. And so I can't remember correctly, but I think it sold within 30 days of being listed. So
Wow.
you got Marty there. He's 75 years old. He chooses Flippa. He lists with Flippa. We match him up to the world's largest universe of buyers, specifically those buyers in this case looking for YouTube channels. He gets the cash. He gets the cash in hand within 30 to 45 days, and he's a really happy guy. He then puts a goodbye message up on his YouTube channel. People go nuts. Now, the channel's now thriving without him. And so he gets liquidity. The new owner gets a business that they can take and run and grow, and everyone's happy. So it's just a story.
What a great story.
How someone who's got passion for something can build an audience, and how someone who has that ability to build an audience can find liquidity.
I love it, man. I love it. And Flippa itself as a business, as a company, is expanding massively. I saw that you just opened up in Spain a couple of weeks ago.
We did. It's a really interesting one. On the YouTube vein, we ended up bringing on, call it an acqui-hire for want of a better description. But we ended up bringing on the founder and some of the staff of an old brokerage called TrustU, TRUST.IU, that was a Spanish-based broker for YouTube channels.
Wow.
So all they did was trade YouTube channels in a traditional brokerage model. And we got to know them. And ultimately, we didn't acquire the business, but when that business shut down, we wanted someone to run YouTube. And so we were able to get the founder of that business and then some of his staff to join us at Flippa and then run our YouTube category. So it was kind of serendipitous, and it worked out well for everyone because now we've got an office there and we can hire there and bring more talent into our European enterprise whilst getting subject matter expertise around YouTube, which is something that we've been passionate about, but haven't necessarily had the capability in-house to run.
That's so cool. And you get somebody else on the other time zone as well. More people behind the scenes, behind the teams. Amazing, mate. So what's next for Flippa? I mean, the last 7 years for you have seen an incredible growth, a change in culture, a change in who Flippa is in the marketplace and how it's regarded by entrepreneurs everywhere. So huge congrats to you. What's the next step? Where will we see you on the horizon?
Yeah, so part of the issue for us is we've got so many buyers and they have very, very specific and different mandates, and you can't always give them what they want. And so that's as a function of not having every asset listed on Flippa. And so what we're thinking about is how we can build an off-market engine for buyers.
Interesting.
And so we have a lot of data on businesses and a lot of data on businesses that are not currently listed on Flippa. And so we believe that a lot of those business owners would love to hear from a buyer, even if they're not formally going through that exit process. And so what we're working on right now is a system that gives those 1.6 million buyers around the world an opportunity to connect with off-market business owners, in addition to obviously consuming the marketplace. So that's very, very focused strategy for us right now. How do you give more of these buyers what they want, given that for the 6,000 assets that are on the platform at any given time, that's not enough to satisfy that huge intent.
Yeah. So there's a really huge growth model for you moving that forward. And of course, the people and the teams that you've got behind you are something special in that space. So you'll be able to leverage that. That's exciting, man. And for you personally, I mean, have you got plans of exiting? Is there an exit in sight from a CEO's perspective?
Yeah, maybe. We've grown 6 years consecutively, and we're proud of that because it's been a challenging climate for a very long time, actually. I mean, we didn't get a COVID bump because most of the digital assets weren't mature enough at that stage to benefit from the Flippa platform. And then you've had this massive sort of groundswell of uncertainty from high interest, high inflation rate climate to geopolitical challenges, and then more recently, the tariff pressure that's really impacted e-commerce. So we're proud of the fact that we've been able to grow for 6 years consecutively in a challenging environment. And we think that so long as we continue that growth rate and trajectory, yeah, there's liquidity on the horizon for Flippa too.
That's fantastic. Amazing. It'd be a great story to tell actually, and especially looking at the journey. Well, guys, as we're listening here from a creator's perspective, there are opportunities for you to invest as a buyer. You can join the crew and find amazing businesses that you can add to your portfolio. But as Blake said, building that dependable viewership, that audience that has attraction genuinely creates an asset for you. So guys, get in touch with the team at Flippa. It's flippa.com. Follow along on their website there, and also the Facebook group, super active. Your buyer agents are out there working the crew and finding buyers for business owners that are selling. The seller agents are obviously engaging there as well. So guys, if you are thinking about what your next step as a creator, as an influencer can be, get in touch with the team at Flippa. There's literally nobody better in the world than the team at Flippa under the helm of Blake, as he said. The guys are very active on Facebook. Blake, I've seen you're specifically active on LinkedIn. I know you've got a huge following there. I think there's nearly 10,000 people that are following your posts on LinkedIn. So find Blake across on LinkedIn. We'll make sure we've got your links there in the show notes as well. And dude, just thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate the insights and what we're doing for the community here.
Yeah, thank you, Walt. I really appreciate it as well. And hopefully it's been helpful for the community.
Yeah, amazing, mate. Thanks again. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next episode.